Federal government gives account of stewardship ahead of Nigeria's 65th anniversary.
Northern Investment Summit to unlock economic opportunities opens in Abuja.
And federal government collaborates with Kogi State on all-year farming for food sufficiency.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the 80th United Nations General Assembly.
Right, so the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA at 80. The theme for this year, Global Partnerships, Local Prosperity, indeed provided a platform for all countries, especially Nigerian leaders, to promote reforms, woo investors, and assert Africa's place in global decision-making.
I must say the theme of this year's UNGA is very, very interesting. And Vice President Shettima, representing President Tinubu, delivered Nigeria's national statement and updated Nigeria's climate commitment under the Paris Agreement.
The Vice President led bilateral talks with investors on key areas of the economy, especially agriculture, solid minerals, technology, and of course advocated for reforms in global taxation and demand for a permanent African seat on the UN Security Council.
And from the Vice President to governors and key ministers who attended the event, Nigeria's delegation at UNGA 80 signals that the country wants to be a driver of global conversations while anchoring reforms at home.
Absolutely. Now, there were also participating governors who engaged in state-focused investment pitches to diaspora communities and global investors, especially on subnational development. They showcased how the various states can align their policies with the renewed hope reforms.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, if you followed events at UNGA, actually spearheaded Nigeria's multilateral diplomacy. He advocated for UN Security Council reforms, while the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, hosted Nigeria Investment Day, which was a side event targeting investors in solid minerals, telecommunication, manufacturing, and technology.
And Nigeria's strategy at UNGA 80 this year rests on broad representation. While the Vice President set the national tone, ministers, governors broke down the renewed hope agenda into sectoral and subnational profiles. It is, of course, on this note that we welcome you once again to Good Morning Nigeria, and it's happening live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, I dare say. I am Claire Adilavu Abdurrazak. Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Hi, Claire. Indeed, you can't beat the rich. Oh, yes. I'm Ian Ray John. Thank you for joining us for this very special Tuesday morning's edition of the program Good Morning Nigeria. Shortly, Chukwudi Okoli-Ogbaja will join us. That's for news paper review. But for now, we have the beautiful Tessie O'Mary ready to serve us the morning news. Tessie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yenre. Good morning, Claire. Hello, Nigerians, and here is the morning news. Nigeria's spirit will continue to remain high and unbroken as a nation after 6 decades. Nigeria's resilience was the focus by Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, at the World Press Conference commemorating Nigeria's 65th anniversary celebration.
The renewed hope agenda has become a guiding framework for transforming Nigeria. It is an agenda that speaks to national rebirth, inclusivity, and sustainable progress, thereby providing hope for our people.
Still talking nationhood, messages of hope, unity and patriotism were re-echoed as the enduring principles that Nigerians should continue to imbibe as the President Tinubu administration is repositioning the country for a greater future. at a World Press Conference as part of activities on Nigeria's 65th independence anniversary. Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris gives account of stewardship of the federal government within the last 28 months.
We are all witnesses to the remarkable reforms taking shape at a pace never seen in the history of this country. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is doing the needful. He is committed, he is courageous, and is also a visionary leader that is gradually dismantling the stubborn clogs in the wheel of our national progress.
Inspector General of Police Kayode Adeolu Egbetokun has described the Nigerian police force as more than just an enforcement institution, emphasizing its role as the frontline defender of law and order in the country. The IGP made this remark while addressing newly called Tuba police officers at the force headquarters. He highlighted the critical role of legal expertise in policing, noting that no force can effectively discharge its mandate without officers who possess a deep understanding of the law and the ability to apply it with clarity.
I charge you to strengthen prosecutions, ensure that our cases are tight, professional and beyond compromise. Uphold integrity. Let your conduct be above reproach.
President Bola Tinubu says the prosperity and growth of Nigeria depends on the contribution of all its regions. He stated this while declaring open a two-day Northern Nigeria Investment and Industrialization Summit in Abuja with the theme Unlocking Strategic Opportunities in Mining, Agriculture and Power.
Areas have been stabilizing the macroeconomic environment, creating jobs, reducing poverty, mobilizing private sector investment, whether domestic, whether foreign.
In talking agriculture, the federal government of Nigeria is collaborating with the Kogi State government on establishment of a mechanized farming in the state for an all-year-round agriculture food production to enhance food sufficiency. Already, a delegation from the presidency is in Kogi State to assess lands for a smooth takeoff.
The federal government, under the Renewed Hope agenda on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, wants every state that has idle land, massive dam, to be utilized, and that's why we have brought our agricultural expert, Mr. Israel Kidron, to develop modern agroeconomy.
And those are the news highlights. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Ian and Claire. After these messages, do have a beautiful day.
It is with great joy and a deep sense of honor that I, Senator Hope Uzodinma CON, Governor of Imo State, on behalf of the government and the good people of our dear state, warmly welcome the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, on an official visit to Imo State alongside the National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Professor Ntawe Yuata, the Senate President, His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, Governors of the All Progressives Congress APC, and other leaders of our great party, the APC, on Tuesday, 30th September 2025. During this historic visit, Mr. President will commission a number of transformative projects that eloquently demonstrate our shared commitments to progress. These include the fully rebuilt Owerri-Mbise-Obowo-Umuahia Road, 2. A brand new flyover connecting Port Harcourt and Onitsha roads with major upgrades around the Assumpta Cathedral roundabout, Owerri. 3. The ultra-modern Emmanuel Nwayamu International Conference Center and other signature projects. In addition, President Tinubu will, as Chief Guest of Honor, unveil my latest book, A Decade of Impactful Progressive Governance in Nigeria, a reflection on our journey as a party and as a nation committed to the ideals of good governance and sustainable development, I look forward to receiving Mr. President, other eminent Nigerians, and friends of Imo State on this momentous occasion. Come and witness history. Join us as we celebrate vision, service, and progress. Signed, Senator Hope Uzodinma, CON, Governor, Imo State.
Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. So, no need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish your kids. Milo 3-in-1 is such a smart choice. Milo, energy to go further.
From Nestle.
Welcome your host, Bisola Ayola.
Hi everyone! Woo! All the way from Akwa Ibom State, it's the sensational family. Woo! And all the way from Benue State, it's the TWC family.
My name is Christiana. I'm a fashion designer.
My name is Christiana. I'm a fashion designer. Hey! You are into Asia. You are into catering. You are into another thing. I sing. You sing as well. Oh my God. Grace, take it away.
All around the world, no one looks like you. You can put a smile on your face. You're beautiful. For the Spirit of the Lord lives and dwells in you.
Woo! Woo! Mention a common response if your situationship should ask you, what are we?
We are just friends. One item. Or like a sister to me.
Nothing.
Lovers. We are who we are.
We are who we are. Survey says.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand. We make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, strengthening unity, we know they carry life. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Nigeria at 65, a continental giant takes another step forward, navigating the contradiction fueled by a colorful and resourcefully diverse populace, yet questions linger on the destination of state, propelled by the vagaries of nationhood. What is your contribution to this journey? Join the NTA and an eclectic mix of everything Nigerian, from the academic deans to the street kings, who will lend their voices on the platform that has always been a part of the journey. The NTA on October 1st, 2025.
All right, welcome back. It's now time to take a look at the papers. All right, newspaper reviewer Chukwudi Okoli-Ogbaja is right here with us this morning. Claire's supposed to be introducing you. I do not know what happened. Maybe.
No, it doesn't matter who does.
I am free for all.
No, you're not free. You are free for all, but not for everybody.
I said that to get Madam Claire's reaction.
Sorry,
Chukwudi.
How are you, ladies?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chukwudi. You don't feel as if you're preparing for tomorrow.
October 1.
Exactly. I thought
October 1. October 1 is a necessary routine. Routine because it occurs every other year, and it's necessary because nationhood is not something you take from the branches of trees.
Absolutely.
You understand?
Absolutely.
So we normally are looking forward to it. The mood of the people, though, might not be too excited because of the economic, times we are in, but life is the best you can get from nature, from God, and hope is even bigger than what you have now.
For those who believe in the faith, one faith or the other.
Exactly.
I tell you that it was not said that there wouldn't be challenges in the world. So sometimes
challenges make your life interesting.
Precisely.
If you have the right frame of mind.
So sometimes we look at the brighter side of things. I mean, assuming you were in one of those countries now that are,
at war.
Yes, at war.
At war.
Conflict prone.
Where,
let's say Sudan,
where
for
freedom
instance.
of expression is a big deal for them and all that.
So these are the things
you would live like a half human being.
I agree. So many things to be grateful for. But for me, as a younger person, I would look forward to when Independence Day would have what we used to have these days, where kids would go to the stadium, have march past, would have debates, would have, a lot of events, to celebrate the country. And then I think for me, I think, that spirit you talk about, patriotism, you start to build it that way, right? So, I mean, I just wish we could actually go back to those days. I used to enjoy it as a young child, looking forward to the march past and all the events that
I don't know
colorful
what to say
events.
about my time.
Honestly,
we had it all.
Honestly, we look forward to it, and unfortunately, those memories, lie with us, people like us.
They would linger.
Yes, except we share. People won't understand what it is, and especially with the recent happening yesterday, right on the front page of the Daily Trust, one of our colleagues, with our sister station, Rise TV presenter, who unfortunately lost her life. We hear in an Abuja robbery, which of course a lot of people have been talking about. Maybe, really, I don't know, Chukwudi, would you want to start on that?
The first thing I say is that we lost a storyteller. When we tell you in the training room or at the training sessions that, yes, you're a reporter, but the ultimate for you is to become a storyteller. Storytelling is different from plain reporting. You develop something that sounds like a feature, but you're doing hard news. Well, you know how you unite that to lead you to your track-ups and all that. And the people really get excited. You build melody and entertainment, even in reporting hard news. Storytellers are capable of that.
Unfortunately, we do run parallel shifts, so I don't get to see...
She was a lawyer too.
Yes, yeah. I don't get to see much of, her works because, yes, we do have parallel shifts. So
it's really unfortunate.
But I think, I don't know, Yenre, you...
Very sad, 29-year-old, all the comments that I have read so far have not been good. I just hope that the police can do something about this.
And they should put everything on the table.
Exactly.
On the face of it, we are told it was robbery. Police don't work that way. They are going to put everything on the table and examine the circumstances. Her health, for instance, was saying something like, now I know why she passworded virtually all her doors. Safety was of utmost importance to her, you know. So you better look in more to know whether it went beyond robbery.
All right, we do stand with our colleagues in our sister stations at this
unfortunate.
You know, we express our condolences. But let's move on now to other, you know, some cheering news. Northern leaders unite against challenges. It's also on the front page of the Daily Trust, and I admire the northern leaders. They always rise up to the occasion, and the way they go about, you know, addressing issues, you know, challenging brothers and sisters in the north, again shows, you know, the essence of unity, the essence of dialogue.
Yes.
And speaking in one voice.
There's a side to it that might not be so cheering. When you begin to push regional things to a point where it seems that you're talking about your region only, and the white green is taking second place, that's when I say some people should watch what they say concerning the regions they come from. Otherwise, Claire, you have a great point when you talk about, I used to talk about the equanimity of the northerner, taking the good with the bad. They know when to come together to confront a common challenge. And unlike some regions where everybody's happy at the same time, you too big, you day your house and all that. I praise the North for it. But it's beginning to wane a bit. It's not as it was then, but it is still there, and it's something that should be commended.
But don't you also think that, you know, what they're doing should be a clarion call for other leaders to sit up? Because if we all rise up to the issues, because the issues that challenge the different, you know, zones differ. Yes, in scope and in content and in context. So it's you must look inwards and begin to look for local solutions to your challenges.
That's it.
And I think that's what the northern leaders are doing. They're looking at themselves.
In the face of insurgency and banditry, I dare say the North is doing well, because those are factors that are enough to scatter the entire landscape. But they still manage some level of cohesion. We should be commended.
All right, my final take before Henry takes our papers. Court holds action as Dangote Pengassin meeting drags on.
I like that because I've always said, why don't you approach the industrial court? Why begin to ask people to unplug things? Don't let this flow and all that. The court is always the final arbiter. The earlier you go to it, the better, if Joe Join does not do it. So I like the way the defendant in this case is saying, no, their actions will be inimical to our operations and all that. It's a court procedure they have embarked upon, which I think is the ultimate, you know. I was reading Professor Ife yesterday when he was telling Pengassin, this case of yours might not stand and all, but please, let's not say anything that turns out sub judice since it's gone to court. But I'm one of those who frown on, you know, what's happening now. Let me not say on behalf of who.
I think the layman is asking, if you look at all the other unions, I mean, the road transport union, you know, which other union again? You know, there's so many of them.
Yes.
You know, they do not go and picket or shut down, you know, their counterparts in the other private sector. Remember that.
That's why I'm told if there's an overreach, which I refrain from because the matter is in court now.
The floor is yours.
All right, so let's see what other papers are carrying this morning. I'll begin with the leadership at my end. This one here, ASU gives federal government 14-day ultimatum over unresolved issues.
ASU again.
Yeah. They will never leave the news, right?
You know, there was this editor I like, Lara Wise, or Where Wise. She made her caption on one of those ASU, you know, it's become a showbiz now. She made her caption, FG, please don't. ASU, we will. It has not changed 12 years on. The caption was FG, please don't go on strike. ASU, we will. No, I keep on praising Lara for that caption. The situation has not changed.
I think there's a lot that needs to be looked at between ASU and the federal government agreement. The key issue is the agreement.
You might need a microscope to examine,
exactly.
Or maybe binoculars.
Exactly.
Because it seems there is more to it than meets the eye. That's the point you may be making.
All right. Away from ASU, some other political stories. Jonathan free to run, but Nigerians recall his failures. That's coming from the presidency, and that's coming as a result of the different headlines that the former president may be running in 2027. Looking away from some of the headlines Claire has read, we have here, court says Utomi's shadow government illegal. Yes. Government declares tomorrow.
Came out 2 days ago. Right?
Yes. Government declares tomorrow public holiday, cancels Independence Day parade. And fresh flood alert issued to 18 states. And INEC is saying Nigerians still have confidence in the electoral process.
Yes.
Looking at the blueprint quickly now. The blueprint here, we have FG on Nigeria at 65. With renewed hope, Tinubu has removed barriers to nation's progress. The riders, bold reforms stabilizing economy, restoring investor confidence. Tax Act's implementation will boost nation's revenue base, and that's according to Idris. Looks like that's about it. Okay, and then NELFund reveals timelines for 2025-2026 applications. So it's important that those in school can go and
very commendable project,
check
that one.
Finally, British diplomat, reports of genocide against Christians in Nigeria. False. Details on page 6.
May God bless him. What did we say yesterday? You know, some NGOs tend to get overzealous about things happening in this country. I'm not saying Nigeria is a haven. I'm not saying Nigeria is the best place on earth at the moment. But then it also does not entail a situation where you go over exaggerating the situation as it is. A lot of things are happening in other parts of the world, and we cannot be isolated from those things as well.
That is my take. Just before I sign you off, I'm asking, if you say what is happening in Nigeria amounts to genocide, why hasn't the UN declared what is happening in other parts of the country, in Gaza, by Israel?
No, they finally did last week.
I mean, it's still under...
Because the Netanyahu onslaught has become unspeakable to the likes of me.
Anyway, but you can't compare what is happening there and what is... I mean, these are our own challenges. Yes. They are not as if it's something you cannot... The government is addressing those challenges as they come.
No, they might need to do more, but give it to them, they are. And what I say is this, when this happens, the strategic communication suggests that you do not let them outclass you in terms of putting out the bad word.
But again, this is where
you also give your own version of it.
This is where the media, comes into play, because most of what the outside world, say about us is what we project to them. So I think that we need to do more and be more, have more of a national interest, than international interest.
Yeah, on Sunday, I said that the journalist is a gadfly. He is a merciless person, a maverick. But when it comes to nation, it's not everything that happens in America that the American journalists report.
Thank you.
So we need to learn from that.
Chukwudi, thank you. And just before, again, Trump seems to have brokered peace deal.
He and Netanyahu have agreed on a peace deal. And they said if Hamas does not accept it, Israel will descend on Hamas. Does that sound peaceful, Claire?
But I hear that Hamas is unlikely to accept.
Actually, they're brokering a situation where former British Prime Minister Tony Blair could be on the board.
Absolutely.
Of them. It's quite interesting. Let's see how it plays out.
Unfolds. Thank you, Chukwudi. Thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
Please fly away. You remember our songs in those days, you don't remember?
Oh, fly away to glory.
No, please don't fly away there now. Please fly away to your... All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Oh, dear.
Chairman Professor Nentawe Iwata and members of the National Working Committee (NWC) of the All Progressives Congress (APC warmly join hands with all party members across Nigeria to welcome our resourceful, promise-keeping and revolutionary president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, to Owerri, Imo State for the unveiling of the book, A Decade of Impactful Progressive Governance in Nigeria, written by Governor Hope Uzodinma. The NWC is proud to present this landmark publication to all Nigerians as a record of the achievements of the APC-led federal government over the past 10 years. Significantly, this is the first time any political party in Nigeria is boldly documenting its performance in government, its achievements, challenges and lessons for the public to assess its full view. This book underscores the sincerity, strength and character of the APC, anchored firmly on the values of accountability, transparency and progressive governance. As the #1 APC man and the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, visits Imo to unveil this historic and historicizing publication, we are proud to proclaim the APC as Nigeria's leading party. We also heartily welcome our current and former governors, members of the National Assembly, state working committees and friends of the party to this grand occasion. Signed, National Publicity Secretary.
Have you been aspiring to be a student of the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University Zaria to no avail? Worry no more, as you can gain entry through NTA Television College Jos, an affiliate of the renowned Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, where eligible candidates with a JAMB admissible scores of not less than 180 and 100 scores and with 5 credits O-level in social sciences including English and mathematics can turn their passion in broadcasting to profession by applying for a BSc in mass communication and MBTE approved innovation diploma courses in film and television production, broadcast journalism and television engineering respectively. The college, as a training herb with a pedigree of professionalism in the media space, also offers specialized courses in other related fields. For more information, visit our website at www.ntatvc.edu.ng or contact 08033 834-343 and 08069-809-897. Announcer Management.
The Renewed Hope Initiative RHI presents the RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow. This national competition is in 3 categories. The household category is a tree planting competition amongst 11 frontline states in northern Nigeria. Each participating household in Adamawa, Borno, Bauchi, Gombe, Jigawa, Kano, Katsina, Kebbi, Sokoto, Yobe and Zamfara states will plant a minimum of 1 tree to qualify, with a video evidence of before and after the tree planting exercise. 20 million naira will be awarded to the best household. Submission deadline is 20th December 2026. Community category will see local governments, local communities, schools and NGOs reclaim and transform degraded or abandoned areas such as dump sites, landfills, parks and their likes into green, vibrant gardens, parks and eco-friendly spaces. 50 million naira would be awarded to the overall best community group. Deadline for submission is 15th July 2026. State category will have all states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, excluding Enugu State, have a chance to address the growing threats to environmental sustainability and cleanliness. States will be judged based on the number of trees planted on major roads and inner streets and how clean they are. 100 million naira will be awarded to the best performing state. Already, Enugu State has 100 million naira for being RHI's model green state due to its greenery and cleanliness. Video evidence must be submitted by participating states on or before 20th December 2026. All entries must be directed to RHI Office, State House, Abuja, or email rhi.greenchallenge@statehouse.gov.ng. RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow.
All right, many thanks for remaining tuned. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And just before we introduce our guests, let's quickly take a look at this background report put together by our correspondent Ibrahim Bello Gunda.
Nigeria made a bold statement at the 88th edition of United Nations General Assembly in New York. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, outlined Nigeria's vision for a more inclusive international economic order that empowers emerging economies towards sustainable growth. President Tinubu's national statement called for a UN reform and a permanent seat for Nigeria at the United Nations Security Council. He also engaged with Gates Foundation, positioning Nigeria as the natural hub for African continental free trade area, while also showcasing Nigeria's energy transition opportunity to global investors and strengthen partnership with the UK on trade, defense and immigration issues. What are the major takeaways from Nigeria's engagement? What does the position of Nigeria on economy, security, trade, global politics among others means? And how can Nigeria consolidate on gains of the 88th United Nations General Assembly? These and more will set tune for discussion on Good Morning Nigeria, as our guests are already seated for the conversation.
All right, thank you, Ibrahim Bello Gunda, for the background report. We really thank you for putting it together. Just to remind you, our conversation, of course, is on the Nigeria's participation in UNGA 80, and of course, outcomes and impact, potential impact that it's likely to have here in Nigeria, and of course to our economy. And our guests are seated, so I'll just quickly introduce Ambassador Dauda Dandadi, who's former Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan, who just walked into the studio. Your Excellency, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning for having me.
Henry, I think you should do the other introduction.
All right. Also here for the conversation is Dr. Adoyi Matthew Omale, an international relations expert. Many thanks for joining us.
Good
sir.
morning, and thank you for having me.
Okay, Professor Mukhtar Imam, Directing Staff, National Institute for Security Studies, joins us via Zoom. And if we have him. All right, that's Professor Mukhtar Imam. Thank you. Good to have you with us.
My pleasure. Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us again as we review Nigeria's outing at this year's UNGA, which is the 80th session. Ambassador Danladi, I'd like to begin with you. And I'd like us to look at, before we step into the nitty-gritty of what happened at this year's, participation. If you look at when UNGA started, that's sometime in 1946, after the World War, Nigeria, first outing was 1960, October 8th. That's after a few days after our independence. I'm just wondering if the first speech made by Prime Minister then, that's Tafawa Balewa Square. Tafawa Balewa, I'm used to saying Tafawa Balewa Square. I'm just wondering if our speech so far, has been in tandem with his profound and historic speech. He touched on critical areas of our foreign policy, areas that defined our foreign policy today. He touched on issue of Pan-Africanism. He touched on non-alignment. He touched on resolve to peace, and of course global security. But I'm told, let me keep you on hold and then go over to Professor Imam. Professor Imam, I hope you listened to my question. Professor Imam, did you hear my question?
Yes, I did.
Tandem so far, our participation in UNGA, has it reflected that very historic speech made by Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa?
Well, Nigeria's foreign policy has been hinged on the maiden address, like you rightly pointed to, made by the late Abubakar Tafawa Balewa in his first appearance at the United Nations right after Nigeria gained her independence. And Tafawa Balewa's position was centered around, or rather, proved to the world that Nigeria's ideals around its foreign policy revolves around the idea of Pan-Africanism and ensuring the liberation and liberty of other African countries. And then, of course, it also spoke to the need to ensure that the security of countries that are newly independent is guaranteed within the international system. And then, of course, this was a time, recall, where the Cold War was ravaging the entire globe. And so Nigeria took the position, or rather took a non-aligned position. Of course, the Cold War, depending on whom you're discussing with, whether it is still here or not, is no longer as relevant as it was when Tafawa Balewa made that address. But as far as the ideals of Pan-Africanism, resource nationalism, ensuring the freedom from colonialism of countries within the African continent, these ideals were achieved. From that period up till the 1980s into the 1990s, of course, we have seen that the only countries that were under the shackles of colonialism, Southern African countries mostly, were liberated as a result of some of these struggles. So yes, these ideals still speak to Nigeria's foreign policy. That's the reason why, of course, Nigeria still assumes the Big Brother position in its foreign policy ideals. It all takes a cue from the idea of Afrocentrism, which is essentially the hallmark of Tafawa Balewa's address at the United Nations. However, times have changed. The dynamics of international politics are no longer what they were. And so therefore, the idea of, say, non-alignment, for example, is not something that Nigeria should continue to hold on to. Pundits have pointed to the fact that there's the need to have a paradigm shift as far as our foreign policy is concerned. We can no longer continue to hold on to our traditional allies, for example, because our interests are not clearly aligned, and so therefore there's the need for us to have a shift. The largest economies, for example, the fastest growing economies and the largest markets in the world are converging in a room today, conspiring. Nigeria should not be outside of that room. I'm speaking to BRICS. And so therefore, some of these dynamics have come to play as far as international politics is concerned. But the address made by Nigeria via the Vice President at UNGA 80 spoke clearly to the fact that Nigeria still holds on to the spirit of that address made by Tafawa Balewa. Because if you listen to the address, which I'm sure we'll come to speak about, the Vice President essentially did not speak just as Nigeria's leader. He spoke as he spoke for the continent, and he spoke for humanity when he talked about the needless wars in Sudan, for example, or across the Sahel, when he talked about the genocide and bloodletting and the killings going on in Gaza, when he spoke about ensuring a balance in international trade and allowing for emerging economies to find a footing within the international system. So overall, yes, we still hold on to the ideals of our founding fathers.
Professor Imam, for your opening comments. I would like to return to the studio now. Of course, we'll get back to you in the course of the conversation. I'd like Ambassador Danladi first and foremost to tell us what he thinks about Nigeria's outing at UNGA 80. But, listening to Professor Imam talk about the Vice President's address, and one major thing, of course, is the call for Security Council reform, and Nigeria actually pitched itself as Africa's leading voice, like Professor Imam said. But some critics will say that looking at our domestic challenges like security, inflation, infrastructure, and all of that, do you think Nigeria is ready for that global role?
Thank you very much. I think I would start by congratulating Vice President Kashim Shettima and commending him for a robust engagement. I think Professor has highlighted some of the key takeaways from the speech that was presented on behalf of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and as well as on behalf of Nigeria and the African continent. Now, is Nigeria really ready? Yes, I think Nigeria is ready because Nigeria has paid its dues from the 60s right down to 2015. Nigeria has featured as a non-permanent member of the Security Council 5 times. And in the 60s, Nigeria has contributed immensely to restoration of peace around the world through peacekeeping operations. And Nigeria, as you know, has played a key role in promoting peace and security, basically in the ECOWAS region. Remember the role that Nigeria played. Nigeria funded and promoted the ECOMOG, that restored peace in Liberia and Sierra Leone, in the Gambia. Nigeria, remember, was a frontline state that promoted the liberation of Southern Africa. I'm talking about countries like Namibia, Mozambique, South Africa. So Nigeria, I think, has paid its due, and Nigeria should really occupy the permanent seat in the Security Council. Africa is a population of about 1.4 billion people. And it's mind-boggling that despite all the declarations and the resolutions, that up to now nothing has been done to reform the UN Security Council that will give the African continent a seat on the UN Security Council so that it too can have a veto power. Look at what has happened. Based on various presentations that was made at the UNGA 80, about almost 147 or so countries have endorsed the state of Palestine so that the two-party solution could restore peace in the Middle East. The catastrophe in Palestine and the ongoing Gaza war is mind-boggling. You have a situation where you have lost over 60,000 people. The United States has spent about almost $17.9 billion in the prosecution of this war. This is senseless as far as looking at the various challenges that is confronting the world, especially the developing countries. That money could have been used to promote promote humanity and promote humanitarian crisis in areas that are required. Issues of climate challenges that has ravaged, especially developing countries. The mitigation. Here is a situation where even the developing countries have pledged the sum of $100 billion annually, okay, to mitigate the effects of climate change. Yet, they have not been able to fulfill that promise, but they are spending this kind of money on war. If you look at what is happening in Ukraine, as was highlighted by Prof, and which was amplified in the Vice President's speech, Ukraine, about $460 billion was spent to prosecute the Ukraine war. We are talking about United Nations is focusing on the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Based on estimate, you need about $1.2 trillion if African countries are going to meet up with the Sustainable Development Goals. On the other hand, you are spending about $460 billion to prosecute a war, an avoidable war, apart from the precious lives that have been lost. So, in a nutshell, I think Nigeria, based on the speech that was presented, of course, it's a continuum of our foreign policy from the 60s to date. I think Nigeria today has positioned itself as the moral conscience voice in the global south, hammering on the need to really reform the UN Security Council, on the need to look at the debt servicing, on the need to reform the international financial institutions that will provide an inclusive participation of the African countries so that we can also contribute to global world peace.
Excellency, thank you. You kept on talking about reforms, and that's why since Henry has taken off on the issue of security. So let me stay on that and speak to the issue of reforms, Dr. Mali. I mean, we know when the 5 permanent seats. I mean, as international relations students, we know how it came about, how those who occupied the seats, you know, France, UK, US, China, and Russia, we know how they came to be on that seat. And when that, you know, provision was made, there was no overt, you know, sign, you know, that it will be expanded. Now, the article, the UN Charter, you know, made provision for how that, you know, could be done, how new members could be, you know, admitted into the Security Council, Permanent Security Council seat, and as well as the non-permanent Security Council seat. Now, Nigeria is vying for a permanent seat in the Security Council. Looking at the rigidity of those charters, Article 108, Article 23, and Article 27, which speaks on composition, voting, and veto powers. Do you think this is feasible? Are we just, you know, this is just rhetoric, you know, request?
Well, thank you very much. Before I make my submission, I want to commend the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, for a very, very well-articulated presentation. His comportment was amazing. His delivery was impactful. He was really, I was really very impressed with his presentation at the UNGA. Now to your question. The United Nations, definitely, the way it stands, just like the Vice President has said, needs reforms. I know, after 80 years, certainly, as at the time, as at 1946 that you talked about, many African countries have not had independence as at that time. At that time, international relations within the context of that period, right from the time of Westphalia, was basically Eurocentric in nature.
But also take cognizance of how that council, that seat, came about.
Yes, it came
was
about
due to their military might.
Yes,
military
it came
power.
about because of certain power, economic power, military might, and several other factors. Above all, it was basically the Allies who won the war. You know, in the Second World War, Russia also was with the victorious. So they shared the seat. They determined what happened. America's entry into the war was a major factor, especially dropping the bomb in Japan, in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So at the end of the war, they sat down to chart a new world order. Now that order is what is being contested in contemporary world.
Okay.
Scholars, experts in international relations have continued to say that after 80 years, there is need for the United Nations to reform. Africa has come of age, and you saw the Vice President make that point, that Africa has reached a point that they need a voice at the United Nations, especially at the Security Council. And I like the way he put it. There's no better country than Nigeria. And he adduced reasons why he thought that Nigeria deserves that seat. And sincerely speaking, I'm not because I am a Nigerian. If today any country is supposed to be considered for that seat, definitely it has to be Nigeria. The Vice President alluded to our population, which is one, our economic growth, which is another, and several other factors, our contribution to global peace and security, which is very important. And I like the point he made. He said, out of 60 peacekeeping missions across the world, I want to, Ambassador, it's not just ECOWAS. Nigeria, right from the time of Burma, we have been contributing peacekeeping force all over the world. And we have committed ourselves to the peace, collective security of the globe. So if there is any country that should demand and get the permanent seat of the Security Council rightly, by merit, it should be Nigeria.
But there are obstacles that Nigeria, apart from peacekeeping contributions, apart from regional power and influence, which Nigeria commands in terms of demographics, there are other issues that Nigeria also needs to overcome, such as there was a consensus that Africa should have 2 permanent seats in the Security Council. Now, you're having Egypt and South Africa as contenders, and none of them has agreed to shift base. Now, you're also having other countries from other, regions, which are also, Brazil, for instance, is also contending to the same post. So, are these not obstacles that really might be quite difficult for Nigeria to really get the UN to third provision?
Claire, let me ask you, what is the reason for the establishment of the Security Council? It's just to provide leadership. The Security Council was created specifically to create leadership instead of leaving the entire United Nations General Assembly to decide, especially in the area of international peace and security, because war has been one of the most fundamental problems with international affairs. Right from the time of the 30-year-old war in Europe up to the Peace of Westphalia, First World War, Second World War. And to be fair, the U.S. Security Council, as constituted, have done a lot. If the UN has not taken certain proactive steps, the war in Ukraine that Ambassador mentioned would have gone beyond what it is today. If the UN and the Security Council have not taken certain steps, the war in Gaza, if it was in the past, like in the 73, where the entire Arab has to join the war. So there have been a lot of back-channel diplomacy by the United Nations, by the Security Council and others to douse the tension. It would have been total anarchy if the UN has not intervened.
Just folded it arms.
Yes, folded its arms and has not activated diplomacy to douse a lot of these tensions. So the Security Council ab initio was created to provide leadership, and that is why it is very strategic.
And you think Nigeria, has the capacity to
in
give
Africa
that
today,
leadership?
as we speak, you mentioned Egypt, you mentioned South Africa. They are not. Even South Africa, we fought for the liberation of South Africa.
Well, you see, Dr. Mali.
So South Africa has no moral justification to want to challenge us for the seat today, because we will tell them, if we had not gone out of our way to support you, to give you all the necessary support, you would have not even come out of apartheid. So it was our magnanimity, our foreign policy that makes Africa the centerpiece of our foreign policy. And when I was in Ahmadu Bello University, Nigerian government was sponsoring South African students. They were my colleagues in the university with our own funds.
Okay, yes. That's a great point, Dr. O'Malley. But you see, looking at some of the statements Nigeria made at UNGA 80, one of course is the condemnation of the crisis in Gaza, calling for justice. Critics have said that, this moral diplomacy is actually at odds with how Nigeria handles human rights issues at home. So looking at what is at play at home, people say, comparing reality with what was said, how do you want to bring in the balance? Is Nigeria really ready for what it's asking for at UNGA 80?
If you measure human rights situation in Nigeria vis-a-vis other African countries, you will commend Nigeria. Nigeria is virtually a free society where people can speak their mind. Look at the vibrancy of the Nigerian media. Look at the vibrancy of Nigerians in challenging government. There was a debate recently I was hearing where a civil rights activist challenged our president, and there was this argument why should a president be called certain names and so on. A lot of people go to the social media, go to the print media, go to the television and everything. People talk and criticize the government. In many African countries, you dare not do that. So in terms of human rights, to be frank, apart from during the military regime where we were in the trenches and fought dictatorial regime, since 1999, a lot has happened in this country that have changed the narrative. Today, Nigerian human rights situation has improved. That is just the truth. I'm not saying there are no challenges.
Of course.
But Nigerian human rights have improved, compared even to some of the countries you are mentioning in Africa, Egypt and some of those countries. I have been to Cairo, I have been to Egypt. I know. So It's not comparable.
So that is not even that. Well, that may not be a major issue.
Yes,
a major obstacle for
us.
For
The obstacle that I see,
yes,
the only obstacle that I see that may stop Nigeria is
veto
gang up.
Okay, gang up. Let's bring
gang up of francophone, anglophone, and several other factors.
Let's bring Professor Imam into the conversation just before we leave the issue of the permanent advocacy for a permanent seat at the Security Council. And I'm wondering, you know, Dr. Mali here is all positive that Nigeria should get it, and that's what the UN as a whole is out, you know, there for, not just the UNGA, not just the assembly. But if African countries themselves fail to unite and, you know, produce 2 countries for the 2 permanent seats that a consensus, you know, had provided for, what strategy can Nigeria employ to, you know, further pursue this case? And do you think that the P5 would want to share their powers, or will they exercise their veto power, which is also, you know, inscribed in the articles, in the UN Charter articles? All right, Professor Imam, please do adjust. I think your mic needs a little adjustment, if you can hear me.
Can you hear me now? Yes, I got your question. Nigeria's ambition to join the rank of members, permanent members of the Security Council, is one that has raged on for a while. You recall the Abuja Accord efforts made by Professor Gambadi during his stint at the United Nations, efforts made by Ambassador Osman Serki during his stint at the United Nations, effort made by other countries that have supported Nigeria's ambition to join the Security Council. However, this is all about diplomacy or diplomatic bargain. The first thing is to ensure that positions are aligned as far as nominating countries that should join the rank of the Security Council from the African continent. We're talking about 50+ countries. And so therefore, naturally, you will find that other countries would want to also put forward their interest and position as well. However, there are certain metrics, there are certain indices, there are certain parameters that must be considered. And like speakers in the studio have alluded to, Nigeria ranks top in all of these, or almost all of these criteria to join the United Nations. Talk about population, for example, 1 out of every 4 African is a Nigerian. So in that respect, it could be said that Nigeria essentially, you know, stands out. And then, of course, speaking of efforts that Nigeria has made in terms of peacekeeping, these are all metrics that are used for measuring. And then to your point, of course, you will find, you know, pushback from other countries. This is where diplomacy has to come to play. We have seen over the years the sort of reciprocity that South Africa, for example, has shown to Nigeria with respect to xenophobia, with respect to the treatment of Nigerian citizens in South Africa. However, it must also be noted that this is not a government-to-government relation issue. This is a people-to-people relation problem. So Nigeria needs to begin to ensure that it aligns its position. It adopts a lot of backdoor diplomacy with respect to how you know it seeks the support of these other African countries that are contending the position with Nigeria. ECOWAS is a block for a lot of maneuver. Nigeria could leverage on its position in ECOWAS to ensure that it gets that done, meaning that it gets the support of all of the countries or most of the countries across ECOWAS. Naturally, Nigeria supports ECOWAS with finances. This might sound not so morally, in tune, but then this is what diplomacy is about. Utilizing whatever, tools available at your disposal to ensure that you achieve your goals. So a lot can be done at the AU level. Nigeria has also made significant progress as well. So I do believe that it will be, a task. However, it is not unsurmountable. Nigeria can actually push through to ensure that it gets the support of Russia, for example. It gets the support of China, for example. China is one of Nigeria's biggest trading partner. Considering the resources that this country holds in terms of human and mineral, China has significant interest in this country. And so therefore, we could leverage on some of this to ensure that we get the support of these countries. But what is most important is that the restructuring of the Security Council has to happen as quickly as possible, because putting veto power in the hands of these individuals, especially those who do not adhere to the ideals of multilateralism. Say, for example, the country that hosts the United Nations. At a time where the world needs to move towards multilateralism, you find that the United States has a president that appears to be ultra-nationalistic in his views. And you saw what happened with the case of the Palestinian president, for example, Mahmoud Abbas, who was refused entry into the United States, perhaps because of his position and his stance on the genocide and the killing that is currently ongoing in Gaza. And that is opposed to the headquarter agreement, which dictates clearly that no leader or president should be disallowed from entering the United Nations on the grounds of whatever disagreements. So a lot needs to be done. As a matter of fact, beyond just the restructuring of the United Nations, I think it's also time for some level of rotation of the General Assembly to ensure that countries also have a feel of what the General Assembly is about, something, akin to what we have at the AU. Because when you allow for these individuals to continue to exact themselves, that is essentially monopolizing power, and it is not rift for a United Nations, because it is what it is. It is the United Nations. So a lot needs to be done in that regard. The United States clearly under President Trump has very little faith in the United Nations. You could hear that from his address. This is the country that, by virtue of the executive order 14155 of President Trump, pulls out of the WHO in January of 2026. This is a country that has pulled out of UNESCO. This is a country that essentially belittles the United Nations. So there's the need to ensure that this, efforts are achieved to have some kind of balance. You see what's happening in Palestine. The United States has vetoed any form of ceasefire 6 times, which, I mean, is anti-human in all ramification and should be disallowed. So, with all of these happenings, with all of these phenomena we're witnessing around the world, I think it's high time that the United Nations has, that restructuring, and that is most fundamental. I hope that Nigeria gets that position. It will take a lot of effort. Can it happen? Yes, I do believe it can happen.
I like your ending, this answer on that positive note. Let's hope that is possible within the next 10, 15 years. Hopefully, maybe even shorter than that. Ambassador, I just want to move away now from the, request for a permanent seat at the Security Council, because discussion on that could, take the entire program. But let's look at another aspect of the Vice President's, contribution to the UN, which is on the updated nationally, contributions to climate change agreement in Paris. And I'm just wondering, each time we talk about climate change, I begin to wonder if European countries, some European countries who are major polluters, have yet to, comply with their own commitments, have yet to redeem their own pledges. I mean, does that not speak of the credibility of even the Paris Agreement on climate change?
Well, I think Professor Mukhtar has also, in his remarks, he has also pointed out some of the lacunas. Okay, and one of them is that major country like U.S. has pulled out of the Paris Accord on climate change, and it is true that the African countries is at the receiving end. The industrialized world, they are the ones who are really creating some of the major challenges with respect to the climate change in terms of industrial emission. However, the African Union really has a key role to play in promoting the interests and priorities of African countries. And that is why I think it will be necessary to strengthen the African Union so that the African Union will play a crucial role in promoting collaboration and partnership with some of the regional and international institutions to ensure that this challenge with respect to the climate change is adequately addressed. You are right. There was a pledge, and I think the pledge was that annually the Western countries will contribute about $100 billion US. That fund is supposed to be accessed by the developing countries, possibly at a concessionary rate, so that they can pursue climate resilient structures, okay, so that they can also, when you look at the issue of, for example, desertification, it costs a lot. And I am from Borno State. The Vice President, speaking on climate change, I believe at the background is the challenge that we had, for example, in Borno State to contain the menace of the desertification that has almost consumed a large part of the state. So again, the focus should be what will be the strategy for us to get our priorities and the interests of African countries. And still, it boils down to strengthening the African Union, ensuring that the African Union collaborate, build and strengthen partnerships with international organizations, regional organizations outside the African continent, the various bodies under the auspices of the UN, so that the interests and priorities of African countries can be promoted.
All right. Many thanks, Ambassador, for that. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, and very interesting listening to Professor Imam, talk about all the issues. But let's look at economic diplomacy now, which was also front burner for the Vice President during his address. Nigeria showcased its economic reforms and energy transition plans, and many people say back home, citizens are yet to feel relief from hardship as a result of the reforms that have been put in place. So do you think foreign investors, are convinced by the message at UNGA, looking at what's happening back home? And then how can we translate global messages into local benefits?
Well, thank you for this question. You see, the floor of the UN gives an opportunity for you to also showcase what you are doing. And there was no better place than for the Vice President to itemize some of the reforms that have been put in, economic reforms that is ongoing in the country. For example, he talked about the removal of subsidy, which is one of the key programs of the current government. He talked about the reforms in the financial sector, especially in terms of our currency, floating of the dollar and so on. And then he talked about debt relief, which has been one of the key issues that have been bugging development, not just in Nigeria, but in many African countries. So there was no better platform to have articulated these various economic issues to the outside world. These issues are very critical to the economic development of not just Nigeria, but the entire African continent. And he made that point, that Africans and that Nigeria specifically have to remove this subsidy, as painful as it looks but the reforms in Nigeria are bearing fruits from the way he has put it, despite the fact that I don't think he's also oblivious of the fact that the reforms are at great pains to the citizen, and that Nigeria is committed to promoting these reforms so that Nigeria economy can be enhanced. So it's a very good platform, and I think with what he has said at the UN, in the next few years, we'll be seeing the result of these reforms. And just like you have asked me, foreign investors will begin to have more confidence in the Nigerian economy. And I like what he said about debt relief. He said, look, we are not begging for these debts to be cancelled. He tried to justify why the demand for this debt relief, because funds that are needed to carry out some of the development programs are being channeled to service these debts, and African countries like Nigeria needs this support, especially carrying out the SDGs and other development programs that need to be put on ground. So at such forum, economic discussions are very, very important because everything we talk about in international relations has to have the component of economic development, and that is why it was very nice that he raised those issues. Having said that, I don't want to, not that I am disagreeing, but you see, in the international relations, there is this debate about countries protecting their national interests within multilateral institutions, and we must look at that. I'm not trying to downplay what Professor Imam has said, but you see, in the power play within the international system, and that is why the countries of the Security Council, don't forget that the formation of the UN was almost an aftermath of a victorious war by the Allies. So nobody carry power and just give you on the platter of gold. This is international politics, and America, China, Russia, Britain, France, they are the key determinants of international affairs. So they will continue to protect their own national interests, even within the larger multilateral institutions. So until we get that, and that sinks into our head, some of the reforms that we are talking about may not be as we wish it to be because of the key nature of international politics. When we have time, we'll discuss that.
Yes, Dr. Mali, thank you. I understand the where you're coming from. But let's again remind you that you can be part of our conversation. Just send us your contributions, your messages via WhatsApp, text messages. The number is right there on your screen. And let's bring in Professor Imam just before we take our break. Professor Imam, I'm just looking at the interplay of soft power, versus hard power now. There's a shift. Countries are using, rather than hard power, they're now relying on soft power, leveraging on their, demographic strengths, culture, agriculture, technology, and all of that now. I'm just wondering, within the context of this year's theme, global partnership and, local prosperity, how does, our outing align with that?
Thank you very much. Nigeria has always placed soft power over hard power. Since our independence in 1960, our foreign policy has revolved around the ideals of soft power. God bless the soul of Joseph Inye, the mastermind of the ideal of soft power. Or God rest his soul, rather. Nigeria essentially has always aligned with that posture. You would come to see that in countries like the United States, for example, where the administration, whether it's Republican or Democrat, determines the kind of power approach, whether soft or hard power approach that they utilize. Contrary to that, Nigeria, with every administration, has always aligned its position with ensuring that soft power prevails. And that's the more reason why, we find it a lot easier to gravitate towards those who align within the same posture. Say, for example, BRICS, an emerging power that is today beginning to say, look, we need to have a rethink around the way the world is handled. The Chinese, with their Confucianist ideals, ensuring that they do not interfere militarily into the affairs of other countries, are taking the lead in this, even though Russia essentially exercises a different point of view with what we are witnessing in Ukraine. However, the dynamics around the Russian-Ukraine war is something that we must also interrogate as well to be able to come to a conclusion whether or not Russia aligns with this position. But overall, Nigeria has always been consistently entrenched in our foreign policy to ensure that we relate with other countries on the basis of a win-win situation whereby issues around the economy, issues around agriculture, like you rightly mentioned, issues around bilateral, multilateral engagements on development, centered around development, take the center stage of all of our conversation. And so, yes, Nigeria has, steadily over and over again aligned itself with the soft power approach. You find that our involvement in engagement, well, like I said, or multilateral, has always been hinged upon how we partner in terms of development and so on and so forth. And that was reiterated and re-echoed in the speech of the Vice President at UNGA to tell the rest of the world that Nigeria is ready for business, that we're ensuring that we're using our soft power to, relate and collaborate with other countries. However, there are times that Nigeria needs to take the firm position to ensure that it exerts itself using still soft power leverage. I give an example of ECOWAS, for example, ECOWAS. The ACE countries, it wasn't the right move to allow the Sahelian countries to pull out of ECOWAS at the time they did. Nigeria has consistently underutilized its soft power. Nigeria is the biggest funder of ECOWAS. It needs to ensure that it consistently doubles down on getting countries to conform to a certain narrative when it comes to international relations. And so, but beyond that, I do believe that Nigeria has aligned itself with the soft power approach.
Talking about African regional leadership, which you have spoken, and all our guests have spoken about, saying that Nigeria actually should take the lead. Looking at the position that, Nigeria, put itself at UNGA, do you think that other African nations see Nigeria's push as a genuine continental advocacy or self-interest dressed as leadership? That's on one hand. And then speaking about, other things that Nigeria could do, Nigeria emphasized Africa's mineral wealth and digital inclusion. How realistic, really, is Nigeria's ambition to lead Africa in these areas?
Well, to the first part of your question, I think in politics generally, whether local or international, it is first and foremost about national interest before anything else. And anybody who thinks otherwise of this doesn't understand how real politics works, whether domestic or within the international scene. So however Nigeria projects the collective will or power of countries within the African continent, it will come first to anybody who's listening that Nigeria is trying to project itself. However, beyond that, what needs to be understood is Nigeria's antecedents in as far as the ideas of Pan-Africanism, in as far as the idea of Afrocentrism is concerned. What role has Nigeria played? How has Nigeria leveraged on the resources it has to be able to ensure that it liberates other countries economically, politically, and otherwise? Nigeria has been consistent in that regard. We have intervened in over 60 peacekeeping missions around the world. Nigeria has and was involved in the liberation of Southern African countries, as has been mentioned earlier by all speakers. And so therefore, the antecedent of Nigeria is what will will be put to test in this regard. And so, you know, that essentially speaks to what Nigeria will come to do at the United Nations. We have always spoken for the African continent. This is not the first time that Nigeria is assuming that position of being the big brother across the African continent. So I believe that this will appeal to the conscience of these other countries in respect to what you have just talked about. However, more needs to be done because you see, in diplomacy, it's about bargaining, like I said. And you must ensure that you're bargaining from a position of strength, not a position of weakness or in no position at all. And so Nigeria needs to do a lot more in that respect. As far as the second part of your question is concerned, I do believe that Nigeria has what it takes. Recall that Nigeria, on the ranking of artificial intelligence, is moving sporadically. If I recall correctly, I think it was somewhere around the 77th around the world now, from a far 106th position in the past. So that tells you that Nigeria is trying to, you know, move in that direction. You would also agree that Nigeria is today has become one of the largest exporter of intellectuals in the sphere of AI. This is verifiable. It's something that can be checked. And so, yes, Nigeria is doing a lot, considering our posture today. And as far as being an economic giant is concerned, you see, the country is moving slowly, but you know, surely to a destination where it takes back its position as the largest economy in Africa. Foreign policy is often at times determined by the domestic policies. As far as our micro and macroeconomic issues are concerned, for the first time we're seeing not just a year-on-year growth or decline rather in Nigeria's inflation. We're seeing a month-on-month decline in Nigeria's inflation, which has dropped to about 20% in the last 4 years. We're also witnessing for the first time that Nigeria essentially has an external reserve of about 42 billion for the first time in 3 or 4 years. All of these speak to, you know, the indices. These are indices that speak to the efforts that Nigeria is making at ensuring that her economy does well. However, we must caution very clearly that while we speak about this on paper, Nigeria's economy appears to be doing well as far as the monetary issues are concerned. Monetary issues in and themselves do not fix an economy. You must have a corresponding fiscal policy. This is bringing the conversation back home now. The government of the day needs to understand that we're faced with a double-edged inflation. And what that means is that we do not have the food available, neither do we have the money available. Trickle-down economics is not happening in Nigeria. This money is stuck at a certain level. It doesn't trickle down to the ordinary person. And so therefore, government needs to do a lot more in terms of intervention, in terms of, you know, advancing more small.
Professor Imam, thank you, and I love the points that you have just made. You have just come down to, you know, the reality of you know, those we call the common Nigerians. You know, I don't know if Ian Ray is part of it, but you know, people like us, when these things don't hit our pocket, we really don't understand. But I can assure you, we had a conversation on Good Morning, and the guests here all agreed that there seems to be better handshake between fiscal and monetary, you know, policies, and that's why we're having the improved indices at the moment, and that's why we're also having, you know, the growth in the economy, in the GDP, I beg your pardon, and also in the economy. But Ambassador, just before we take a break, you know, he has touched on the need for all of these efforts, you know, to impact on the lives of the average Nigerian, and that's why I'm looking at translating the theme for UNGA 80, which is translating that global partnership into local prosperity and investment outcomes. Do you think that Nigeria struck, you know, at deals that can quickly translate, you know, these into jobs and, you know, better livelihoods for Nigerians?
Well, thank you very much. I think, yes, Nigeria has done that because if you look at the engagement of Vice President Kashim Shettima, on the sideline, he has held various bilateral meetings, showcasing the potentials of Nigeria, unfolding the $200 billion investment opportunities in Nigeria, especially in the area of energy. I think Nigeria, to a large extent, I think has demonstrated that it is possible to translate some of these bilateral engagements into concrete realities so that jobs could be created. You know, he has emphasized on the need for fair sharing formula when mineral resources are exploited. Nigeria today is among the top states that have proven lithium. Lithium is one of the key mineral resources in the drive towards mitigating climate change and the greenhouse. And therefore, really, if I can be a little bit radical, perhaps we need to weaponize some of our mineral resources so that we can achieve the desired goals and ensure that, yes, there is robust partnership with some of these multinational corporations that are engaged in the exploration and, of natural resources so that we can build our local processing capacities to create the necessary jobs that will give our teeming youths the opportunity to be gainfully engaged. So it's possible to translate some of these bilateral engagements, the engagement with financial institutions like the African Development Bank that has now made huge provision. I think he was able to get that, and I think if I am right, is to establish additional about 24 special agro-processing centers in the states. And if that happens, of course, it will create the necessary job and the opportunities, and of course, the impact will be felt.
I'm sorry, I had to stop you because we're shooting our break period. Please, let's take a short break. We'll come back.
The chairman, Professor Nentawe Iwata, and members of the National Working Committee, NWC, of the All Progressives Congress, APC, warmly join hands with all party members across Nigeria to welcome our resourceful, promise-keeping and revolutionary president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, to Owerri, Imo State for the unveiling of the book, A Decade of Impactful Progressive Governance in Nigeria, written by Governor Hope Uzodinma. The NWC is proud to present this landmark publication to all Nigerians as a record of the achievements of the APC-led federal government over the past 10 years. Significantly, this is the first time any political party in Nigeria is boldly documenting its performance in government, its achievements, challenges and lessons for the public to assess its full view. This book underscores the sincerity, strength and character of the APC, anchored firmly on the values of accountability, transparency and progressive governance. As the #1 APC man and the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, visits Imo to unveil this historic and historicizing publication, we are proud to proclaim the APC as Nigeria's leading party. We also heartily welcome our current and former governors, members of the National Assembly, state working committees, and friends of the party to this grand occasion. Signed, National Publicity Secretary.
For the past five years or more, the world has started recognizing female filmmakers. Female filmmaking and filmmakers was not really a thing initially because it's still a male-dominated sector. But suddenly, women are being put in places that has been able to give us opportunities and open our minds to so many different and unique things that we have been behind the scenes and been deprived of. Now we've seen that this avenue has been presented for us. We are being recognized globally. When we go out there, female filmmakers are now being put among top top 10 of, everything that's happening in the world when it comes to filmmaking. So now when we have this kind of opportunities, all these kind of opportunities being presented to us, what do we do as female filmmakers? We are not going to say, oh, we failed at it. There's not been any form of failure. It was just about the right time, and the right time is now. Now that we have those platforms presented to us and the opportunities being presented to us, what do we do as female filmmakers? Do we get up, step up, combine forces, and work towards making sure that female stories are told the way that we want them to be told? Or do we just sit back and still be afraid to push forward? I am one of those people that I'm not afraid to push forward and to make sure that I'm telling the right stories that need to be told as a female filmmaker.
There's so much that females are doing right now. We have females in the box office, hitting the box office, and we have females producers now. So women are not just sent to do makeup or act. There are lots of women coming behind the scenes like myself and also doing great movies because we are good storytellers. We actually tell stories in great details and with a lot of soul and heart. So females in Nigeria are really evolving from just the people that are used in front of the cameras and doing makeup and welfare to directors, producers, cinematographers, and sound engineers. And that's amazing for me to see that in my lifetime.
What we realized, some of the biggest films out of Nollywood are from female, from the likes of Jade Oshibere, from Kemi Adetiba, Funke Akindele. The highest grossing film is from Funke Akindele. We've seen these people have actually taken they've taken the baton and they're actually thriving and putting us on the global map. I mean, for female cinematographers, what I want to encourage more people is that we should have more female people behind technical team. Like, it's not just the directors, like the fancy names. We need to encourage more females to actually take roles behind the scene, technical roles. We need more female in the gaffer department. We need more female in the sound department. Now we have more female editors, but we need more of that. What that does encourages other people. You're not just going into the film industry as a makeup artist. You know that you would thrive if you decide to take on other roles that are technical because you think that you give you a job. I tell people that it's not just about training people. Do they have pipeline to actually grow? Not just even train them, give them jobs. Let them grow. Let people know that it's possible for them to actually thrive in these roles.
The same way that I can go out there and combine with other top female filmmakers, and we can combine forces, partner, collaborate, and make bigger and greater things happen together. So I feel like this is the time. The world is seeing the power of female, and we have it. Is in our hands, and now we're making the very, very most of it as female filmmakers here.
All right, many thanks for staying with us. It's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. Our guests are still very much with us, and we're discussing UNGA at 80, Nigeria's representation, and the takeaways from that very strategic meeting. We have some comments now from our guests. Feel free to send your comments or questions. The number is on the screen, and of course it would be taken. Looking at some of the messages that we have already, this one here says Uduak Nkation, and says considering Nigeria's economy, population, contributions, etc., we should be given that permanent seat in UN Security Council. All right. Another one says, Jack Abba from Akodi, Nigeria's attendance and presentation in UNGA 80 have always been applauded. In UNGA have always been applauded. Please tell us the benefits of the permanent seats to Nigeria. That's a question. I'm sure our guest will respond to that. Another one says Vice President represented Nigeria well at UNGA, and Nigeria deserves a permanent seat at the UN. All right, Ahmed Shua from Adamawa State sends that. Another one says the UN's 80th anniversary is a milestone worth celebrating, with significant successes in promoting global peace and cooperation. Nigeria as a member state has demonstrated commitment to fostering peace in Africa. Given its contributions, Nigeria's bid for a permanent UN Security Council seat is well deserved, and granting it would acknowledge its leadership in global affairs. That's coming from Chike Dim from Warri, Delta State. All right, Claire.
Yes, okay. I have just one or two. This is from Sebastian Ofumbia. He says to Dr. Omale, I hold 100% your proposal that we have to reposition our country. Power is not given, but that you have to grab it, so Nigeria should look inward. From Sebastian Ofumbia. Good morning. This is from Dogara Joshua. The analysts have put forward a very strong argument for Nigeria's candidacy of UN Security Council. Dogara, thank you. And Emmanuel Joseph Bello from Jos. Kudos to our VP for well-articulated speech at UNGA. Nigeria has paid its dues, her dues, in different engagements in the United Nations. Now it's time for payback to consider Nigeria with a security permanent seat. I think we'll more comments and messages. Once they come in, we'll take them. But let's again return to Dr. Omale, and we're just looking at the impact over the years. We're talking about, anger. Each year we visit anger. But truly, how from your perspective, how has the resolutions, how has it affected, us? Us, I mean Nigeria generally. In what ways have we benefited? In what ways, has it impacted in what we do?
Yes, the United Nations General Assembly holds annually, and a lot of resolutions are taken. These resolutions, yes, you might not get immediate results, but whether we like it or not, it creates an avenue for countries to ventilate, for countries to put up proposals, for countries to address global issues. There's no other platform that gives that opportunity for heads of states, government of various nations of the world, sovereign nations of the world, to converge once every year to come and discuss issues that affect the entire globe. I think that is very instructive. It provides that platform. And once these matters are discussed, they are vigorously implemented by both the Security Council and the Secretariat of the United Nations.
The argument is that, the session is usually very long on speeches, but limited or even, shorter on the outcomes, positive outcomes,
yes.
For member countries.
Yes, the United Nations, one of the major problems with the United Nations and also the League of Nations before the United Nations is the problem of enforcement of decisions. It's very difficult because enforcing these decisions, especially when it comes to issues of global security, becomes very difficult because there's no standing force. Just like, unlike countries where we have the police, we have the army, we have other, the court, the security agencies, in the international, at the level of the UN, there are no bodies to enforce some of these decisions.
All right.
So most times it's just a moral obligation. Just a moral obligation that, the UN has taken this position, they have made this
no binding force.
No binding force. And that is why the powerful nations, most times, neglect or do not follow some of these resolutions.
Okay.
Because there are no binding effects.
All right.
But it is very important that these resolutions are taken. It serves as a moral compass. It serves as an indictment, if you may call it. But in terms of economy, it's only in the area of maybe security and so on that you might get on some of the unenforceable. But in the area of SDGs, MDGs, funding of certain projects, climate change, a lot of progress have been made by the UN.
Okay.
Even in the area of medicine, in the areas of a lot of collaboration has taken place. And if you look at the theme of this year's conference,
global partnership,
partnership
and prosperity
to address development, human rights, and collective security. So a lot has been done. And one of the speakers or the commentators was asking of what importance is the Security Council. The Security Council is very critical. You can imagine that the whole of Africa, when the 5 permanent members go to sit or the Security Council go to sit, they could veto decisions. So imagine if they are going to deploy a force, maybe to Sudan, or America wants to go and attack South Sudan, or maybe attack Somalia or Ethiopia, and there's no Africa there to say, why are you going to do that? So you could veto, because once you are in the security, you are a permanent member of the Security Council, you could veto such decisions as it affects Africa. As it is now, Europe is represented, Asia is represented by China, and then the other 4 members are Europeans, including Russia, France. So we are not on that table. We are not on that seat. And like Professor Imam said, international relations is about negotiations. It's about discussing. And if you are not there where the key issues are being discussed, then you are isolated. So if we say it is United Nations, then all the continents should be represented at the Security Council. That is just the point.
Many thanks, Dr.
Just to address that point.
Many thanks, Dr. O'Malley, for your perspective on that particular issue. Let's get to Professor Imam now to begin to round up the conversation. Earlier when you spoke, Professor Imam, you talked about the reality for the average Nigerian, and that's why some critics would say that Nigeria should focus less on global visibility and, you know, just look at fixing domestic problems first before seeking international leadership. I'd like to hear your thoughts about that. And if you think that the position Nigeria is taking in terms of leadership on the African continent is the right step, how then can Nigeria bridge the gap between what it says at global stage and what citizens experience at home?
Well, again, for those critics, I would say that Nigeria is not an island. Nigeria does not live in isolation. Nigeria lives within an international system, and Nigeria must relate with other countries within the international system. No country is an island on its own. The United Nations was established to ensure that all countries have you know, their sovereignty guaranteed and respected, the sanctity of human life, and a no to another world war, which some of us are very skeptical and doubtful of today. However, you know, the reality is that Nigeria must engage with other countries, consciously or subconsciously. And the reality is that your efforts at developing what you have in your country places you on a better pedestal as far as negotiating with other countries within the international system is concerned. So yes, while it is important that Nigeria looks inward to harness its resources, ensure that it drives development across the country, it is equally important that Nigeria continues to pursue its foreign policy objectives, whether at bilateral or multilateral level. Now, the thing is, countries like China, for example, were able to find a place around the Security Council because of their economic strength. In international relations, there's a consensus that economic power surpasses all other powers, and that the rise and fall of every global power is predicated upon its economic prowess. So therefore, Nigeria needs to do more. The African continent has to do more as far as you know, South-South cooperation is concerned, to ensure that resources are harnessed and utilized. Until and unless we achieve that, it's going to be quite difficult for us to make any mark as far as, you know, having a footing around international regimes or organizations are concerned, such as the United Nations. So the issue here is, it's not about Nigeria, you know, cutting off ties with other countries or withdrawing its position or posture or role at that level, but ensuring that these things are done pari passu. While you develop your country inward, you must ensure that you also take that to the global stage as well. As far as readiness, to the other part of your question, as far as readiness, as far as Nigeria's posture, we've constantly talked about the resources domiciled in this country. Again, I talked about the human resource and the strength of Nigeria as a country. This is a country that houses 60% of the world's arable land, meaning that we can feed the world, and you will never hear of a food glut. 70% or more of the world's rare earth is found across the African continent, and this country houses a chunk of that. We're the third highest with the highest deposit of gas and the 6th with the highest deposit of oil. Name it, we have these resources. The point is that we need to begin to harness these resources and ensure that these resources are used for the betterment of the citizenry. And that's the reason why I spoke to the domestic issues, to ensure that what happened in other parts of the world does not repeat itself. Remember Tahrir Square. Egypt's economy was doing fantastically well on the paper under Hosni Mubarak, but the reality on the ground was different. It did not match that. And at the end of the day, governments are judged by the micro. And
Professor Imam, thank you. In just 30 seconds, if you were to be an advisor, to the government, I'm just wondering, which would you push for? Is it harder push for the Security Council or prioritizing investments?
Well, the both can go pari passu. We don't have to leave one for the other. I think my 10 seconds.
Thank you. Do you think that we exerted enough weight in terms of diplomacy?
I think we have, but I just want to follow up on what Dr. Omali has said with respect to the implementation of resolutions that have been passed over the years. I think what African countries need to do is to strengthen the African Union to ensure that the African Union build strong collaboration and partnership with international organizations. We need to have a strategic lobbying strategy so that we can push our interest, the interests of Africa, the priorities of Africa, and at the same time to ensure that we sit out on the table of the US, because if you are not on the table, you become the menu, and we should be able to.
All right, if you're not on the table, you become the menu. Dr. Omali, your last thoughts as we round up the conversation, and what steps do you think Nigeria should be taking now to prove that it was not just talking at the UNGA 80, but actually ready for, concrete action?
Yeah, Nigeria should not be tired of carrying Africa on her shoulders. Nature has trust the leadership of Nigeria, and Nigeria must not abdicate that responsibility at this point in time. We must not shy away from that role that has been entrusted on this great country. And I think with what the Vice President has said, it underscores that. So we must continue to provide leadership for Africa. We must continue to ensure that we do the right things domestically, because domestic policies influence foreign policy across many countries. So I agree that we must also, while we are crying for reforms at the United Nations, we should ensure that domestic reforms are sustained. That is just my petition.
All right. Many thanks to all our guests. Indeed, it's been a very insightful conversation. Many thanks, Ambassador Dauda Danladi, former Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan. It was a pleasure to have you as a guest, and many thanks for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Dr. Adoyi Matthew Omali, International Relations Expert, thank you once again for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Professor Mukhtar Imam, thank you for your insights, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. Director and staff at the National Institute for Security Studies, thank you once again for being our guest.
My pleasure.
Good morning, Nigeria. For today, I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. Bye-bye.
And I'm Yanre John. Live locked on the NTA.